Alright guys, today we're going to go ahead and make some homemade cheese. We talked about that cooking is a great way to demonstrate chemical reactions. So we're going to go ahead and do a real simple one where we're going to make some homemade cheese. It's really good, pretty easy recipe, and we'll also be able to talk about some of the chemistry behind that. Alright, so what you're going to need to start this is you're going to need some whole milk. You're going to need vinegar, about a quarter cup of vinegar. You're going to need some salt, a pot, and some cheesecloth. Okay? Right, we're going to start with a half a gallon of milk, and we're going to go ahead and just pour that in. We're going to boil. We'll bring our pot to a boil. Right. Carefully pour my half a gallon of milk. So we're going to go ahead and bring this to a boil because a lot of chemical reaction, of course, needs heat, right? For our reaction to occur, for the chemicals, the different molecules to bond together, all right, or to separate in certain cases. So we're going to go ahead and heat it up, and I'm going to come back and in a little bit we'll talk more about that as it starts to boil. All right, so while we're trying to heat up our milk here, I'm going to notice that I'm just going to keep continuously stirring every once in a while because we don't want the milk to scorch the bottom of the pan and get burnt down there. So just kind of good cooking tip when you're cooking milk or trying to heat up milk, certain materials, you don't want it to burn the bottom of the pan, so you just want to kind of stir it every once in a while. Okay, so you want to be really careful not to walk away from your milk because I walked away for 1 second and it boiled over and we made a mess. Okay, so that's okay because we're just about done. It reached its boil, and we're going to go ahead and lower the heat and let it simmer for a little bit. Alright, so I measured out a quarter cup of vinegar, and we're going to go ahead and add this to our milk. So here's where the chemical reaction occurs. Okay, so when we talk about chemical reactions, again, it's when we take two substances, mix them together, and we get a whole new substance. Well, in this case, when I mix the vinegar goes through a chemical reaction process with the fats and the proteins, and it kind of rearranges those into new fats and proteins. And that's what is going to be, when we put these two together, our sign that the chemical reaction occurs is that we have a precipitate form. It's going to become a solid. Okay, so again, in this case, we take the vinegar and it goes through a chemical reaction, which is very similar to the chemical reaction that when we make cheese using bacteria, or when you take your milk and it kind of goes bad in the refrigerator. The bacteria will go through that very similar chemical reaction, except we're just going to use vinegar instead of bacteria to use that same chemical reaction. And you're going to notice that as soon as I add this in, that milk is going to start to curdle. And right away, it started to get chunky, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of stir it around. And you can see the chunks inside our milk. And there's that chemical reaction. And so again, this chunky stuff we call the curds. And so in the nursery rhyme of Little Miss Muffet sounding her tougher eating her curds away, so we have the curds, which is going to make that nice cheese, and the leftover is what we call the whey. That milky bluish green color liquid is actually very high in protein. And so if some of you guys have ever seen protein drinks, it talks about having whey inside there, and that's what it is. It's high in protein mixed from our fats. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now remove this from the heat. We're going to let that cool for just 1 second, and then we're going to move it over and strain out the whey. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pour my curds and whey into this colander here. Some people like to save the whey because it makes a good, they use like the proteins out of it, but I don't have any need for it, so I'm just going to go ahead and pour that right down the sink. Alright, so what I did is I took another colander, and I line that with my cheesecloth. So I'm going to go ahead and I can just go ahead and add in my cheese to the cheesecloth. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of sea salt to give it some flavor here. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I can take my cloth and lift it up. Oops, lost all of it. Let's try that again. Go ahead and gently squeeze out any more liquid that might be in there. And we're just going to let it set and make sure that all that liquid's drained out. We're going to let it cool for a couple of seconds, and then we're going to go ahead and shape it. Okay, so now that I've got it cooled off a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of squish it down and make it into a round-ish shape. Alright, so I want my cheese to be round so that when I am finished I can cut it and squish it all together. And you can see that as I continue to push and squeeze, some of that cheese is, again, some of that whey is being squished out. I'm going to go ahead and drain off that extra whey. I'm going to leave my cheese here like this. I'm actually going to go ahead and add a second plate on top of there to give it some weight. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and just add that into the fridge to cool for 2 hours. Okay. So now for the most important part of this experiment is cleanup. Okay, so make sure that when you guys make a big mess, you ask Mom to clean up for you, right? No. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and take it out of their fridge. It's been in there for a couple hours now, enough for it to cool. So really now if we take that off, all I have to do is I'm going to take the cheesecloth and start to peel that off. Alright, flip it right over. Get rid of the cheesecloth. I'm just going to take a knife and go ahead and put a little cheese wedge out of there. Alright, so we give it a shot. And it's delicious. So hopefully you guys can make this at home. Have fun with it. See you later.